Hello, and welcome. Today, we are going to talk about one of the most powerful and influential countries in the world, the United States of America. The United States is a young country compared to many others. It is only about 250 years old. But in that short time, it has had an enormous impact on the world. Let us start from the very beginning. Before anyone from Europe arrived, the land we now call the United States was already home to millions of people. These people are called Native Americans, or indigenous people. They had lived on this land for thousands of years. Some scientists believe for more than 15,000 years. There were hundreds of different groups, or tribes, of Native Americans. Each group had its own language, its own culture, and its own way of life. Some groups, like the Sioux, lived on the Great Plains and hunted buffalo. Others, like the Cherokee, lived in the forests of the East and were farmers. Others built large cities, like the Aztec and Maya civilizations further south in Central America. These people had rich cultures and complex societies, but their lives changed completely when Europeans arrived. In 1492, an Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus sailed west from Spain, trying to find a new route to Asia. He did not reach Asia. Instead, he arrived in the Caribbean islands, near the Americas. This was a huge moment in history. Europeans now knew that there were lands on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. After Columbus, many European countries sent explorers to the Americas. Spain, Portugal, France, and England all wanted land, gold, and power in this new world. The Spanish took control of large parts of South America and Central America. The French explored Canada and the Mississippi River area. And the English began to settle along the east coast of North America. In 1607, English settlers built the first permanent English settlement in America. It was called Jamestown, in the area we now call Virginia. Life was very hard for these early settlers. Many died from disease, cold, and hunger. But they survived, and more settlers came. In 1620, a famous group of settlers arrived. They were called the Pilgrims. They left England because they wanted religious freedom, the right to practice their religion without being punished. They sailed on a ship called the Mayflower and arrived in what is now Massachusetts. They made friends with some Native American tribes who taught them how to grow food. This is why Americans still celebrate Thanksgiving every year, to remember that difficult first year and the help they received. Over the next 150 years, more and more Europeans came to America. They built towns, farms, and cities along the East Coast. Eventually, there were 13 colonies, areas controlled by Britain. These colonies were home to about 2.5 million people by the 1770s. But there was a very dark part of this colonization. Europeans brought enslaved people from Africa to work on farms and plantations, especially in the southern colonies. These people were taken from their homes by force, transported across the ocean in terrible conditions, and forced to work without pay or freedom. Slavery was a cruel and deeply unjust system that would cause enormous pain for hundreds of years. By the 1760s, the 13 American colonies were becoming unhappy with British rule. Britain was far away, across the ocean, but it made the rules. And now, Britain was asking the colonists to pay more taxes, money paid to the government. The colonists were angry. They said it was not fair to pay taxes to a government they had no say in. Their famous phrase was, "No taxation without representation." Tension grew. In 1770, British soldiers shot and killed 5 colonists in Boston. This is called the Boston Massacre. In 1773, angry colonists threw a whole shipment of British tea into Boston Harbor to protest the tea tax. This event is called the Boston Tea Party. Britain responded by sending more soldiers and tightening its control. The colonists began to organize. Leaders like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams began to talk about independence, separating from Britain completely. In April 1775, the first battles of the American Revolution took place. Farmers and ordinary men fought against the professional British Army. Then, on July 4, 1776, the leaders of the colonies signed a very important document, the Declaration of Independence. It was mostly written by Thomas Jefferson. It said that all men are created equal and that they have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. July 4th is now celebrated every year as Independence Day in the United States. The war continued for several more years. It was difficult. The American army, led by George Washington, did not have enough food, clothing, or weapons. But they had strong motivation. They were fighting for their own freedom. In 1778, France joined the war on America's side, which helped greatly. Finally, in 1783, Britain admitted defeat and signed a peace agreement. The United States of America was now a real, independent country. After independence, the new country had to decide how to govern itself. In 1787, leaders from all 13 states met to write a set of rules for the country. This document is called the Constitution. It is one of the most important documents in the world. It created a government with three parts: the President, the Congress, and the Supreme Court. These three parts were designed to balance each other, so that no single person or group could have too much power. In 1789, George Washington became the first president of the United States. He was respected by almost everyone, and he set many important traditions that presidents still follow today. In 1791, the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution. This is a list of 10 important freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to a fair trial. The new nation was growing fast. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson made a very important purchase. He bought a huge area of land in the middle of North America from France. This is called the Louisiana Purchase. It nearly doubled the size of the United States. The young country now looked west and began to expand. Through the 1800s, the United States grew larger and larger. Americans moved west, building farms and towns. This movement is called westward expansion. Many Americans believed it was their destiny, their special mission, to control the land from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. This idea was called manifest destiny. But this expansion came at a terrible cost. As Americans moved west, they pushed Native American tribes off their land. The government forced Native Americans to move to small, poor areas of land called reservations. Many Native Americans resisted and fought back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Entire cultures were destroyed. This was a very painful and unjust period in American history. The United States also fought a war with Mexico from 1846 to 1848. After winning, the United States took a large area of land that includes the modern states of California, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. By the mid-1800s, the United States stretched from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Pacific Ocean. As the country grew, a terrible conflict was building inside it. The question was slavery. In the northern states, slavery was already illegal. In the southern states, slavery was still legal and the economy depended on it. Southern plantation owners grew cotton and other crops using enslaved people. They did not want to give that up. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, southern states were afraid he would end slavery. So 11 southern states decided to leave the United States and form their own country, called the Confederate States of America. Lincoln said they did not have the right to do this. And so, in 1861, the American Civil War began, a war between the northern states, called the Union, and the southern states, called the Confederacy. It was the deadliest war in American history. About 620,000 soldiers died. Families were torn apart. Cities were destroyed. In 1863, President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, a document that declared all enslaved people in the Confederate States to be free. It was a powerful moment, though freedom did not come immediately for everyone. In April 1865, the Confederacy was defeated. The Union was saved. The United States would remain one country. But just days after the war ended, Abraham Lincoln was shot and killed at a theater in Washington. He became one of the most beloved presidents in American history. After the war, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was passed. It officially abolished slavery everywhere in the United States. But the struggle for true equality for African Americans was far from over. After the Civil War, the United States changed very quickly. Factories were built. Railways connected the whole country. New inventions, like the telephone, the light bulb, and later the automobile, transformed everyday life. This period is called the Industrial Revolution in America, and it made the country very rich and powerful. During this time, millions of people came to the United States from other countries. They came from Italy, Ireland, Poland, Russia, China, and many other places. They were looking for better lives, for jobs, freedom, and opportunity. Between 1880 and 1920, about 20 million immigrants arrived. Many of them entered through Ellis Island, a small island near New York City, where they were checked and registered before entering the country. The Statue of Liberty, standing nearby, welcomed them with a message of hope. This huge wave of immigration changed America. It became a country of many different cultures, languages, and religions. Today, Americans often call their country a melting pot, a place where people from all over the world come together. In 1914, a great war began in Europe, World War I. At first, the United States stayed out of it. But in 1917, after German submarines attacked American ships, the United States joined the war on the side of Britain and France. American soldiers helped turn the tide of the war. In 1918, Germany was defeated and the war ended. After the war, the United States entered a period of great excitement and energy. The 1920s are called the Roaring Twenties. The economy was growing fast. People had more money and more free time. Jazz music became popular. Women cut their hair short and wore new fashions. New technologies like cars and radios changed daily life. It felt like a golden age. But it did not last. In October 1929, the stock market crashed. People who had invested their money suddenly lost everything. Banks closed. Businesses failed. Millions of people lost their jobs. This terrible economic crisis is called the Great Depression. It lasted through the 1930s and affected not just America, but the whole world. While America was struggling with the Great Depression, dangerous leaders were rising in Europe and Asia. Adolf Hitler took control of Germany and began a campaign of hatred against Jewish people and others. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and World War II began in Europe. Again, the United States tried to stay out of the war. But on December 7, 1941, Japan made a surprise attack on the American Navy base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The next day, the United States declared war on Japan. Germany then declared war on the United States. America was now fully in the Second World War. The United States fought in both Europe and the Pacific Ocean. American industry produced enormous amounts of weapons, ships, and planes. American soldiers fought in North Africa, Italy, and France. On June 6, 1944, called D-Day, American and Allied soldiers landed on the beaches of Normandy in France in a massive attack. It was one of the most important military operations in history. It helped break Germany's power in Western Europe. In Europe, the war ended in May 1945, but the war in the Pacific continued. To end it quickly and avoid a long invasion of Japan, President Harry Truman made a very difficult and controversial decision. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 3 days later, another bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. These were the most destructive weapons ever used in war. Japan surrendered, and World War II ended. But the world would never feel safe in the same way again. After World War II, the United States was the most powerful nation in the world. But it had a rival, the Soviet Union, which is now Russia. Both countries had nuclear weapons. Both wanted to spread their ideas around the world. This tense standoff is called the Cold War. It was called cold because the two countries never directly fought each other, but they came very close. In 1950, the Korean War began. In the 1960s, the Vietnam War divided the country deeply. Millions of Americans protested against the war. Meanwhile, a race to space began between the USA and the Soviet Union. In 1969, American astronaut Neil Armstrong became the first human being to walk on the moon. It was a moment of enormous pride for Americans everywhere. Inside the country, another important struggle was taking place. African Americans were still not treated equally. In the South, there were laws that separated black and white people in schools, restaurants, and buses. This system was called segregation. It was deeply unfair. In the 1950s and 1960s, the civil rights movement grew. A young minister named Martin Luther King Jr. became its most famous leader. He believed in peaceful protest. He organized marches, boycotts, and demonstrations. His most famous speech, delivered in Washington in 1963, included the words, "I have a dream of a country where all people are equal, regardless of their skin color." In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed. making racial discrimination illegal. It was a major victory, though the struggle for equality continued. The Cold War finally ended in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. The United States was now the world's only superpower. Through the 1990s, the economy grew strongly. Technology companies like Microsoft and Apple became global giants. The internet changed everything, the way people communicate, work, shop, and learn. Then came September 11th, 2001, a day that changed America forever. Terrorists hijacked 4 airplanes and flew 2 of them into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. A 3rd plane hit the Pentagon in Washington. The 4th crashed in a field in Pennsylvania after passengers fought back against the hijackers. Nearly 3,000 people died. It was the deadliest attack on American soil in history. In response, the United States went to war in Afghanistan and later Iraq. These wars lasted for many years and cost enormous amounts of money and many lives. In 2008, America made history again. Barack Obama was elected as the 44th president, the first African American to hold that office. It was a deeply symbolic moment for a country that had once permitted slavery. His election showed how much the country had changed. So what is the story of the United States? What does it mean? It is a story of enormous contradictions. The same country that wrote, "All men are created equal," also kept millions of people enslaved. The same country that welcomed millions of immigrants also treated many of them badly. The same country that fought for freedom around the world also made many mistakes in its foreign policy. But it is also a story of constant change and improvement. Again and again, Americans have fought to make their country better, through civil rights movements, through elections, through protests, and through the courts. The United States has shown that a country can change, even if the change is slow and difficult. The influence of America on the world is enormous. The English language, American music, American films, American technology, and American culture have spread to every corner of the globe. Companies like Apple, Google, Amazon, and Netflix are used by billions of people. American universities attract the best students from every country. Hollywood films are watched everywhere. American music, jazz, blues, rock and roll, hip-hop, has influenced musicians all around the world. The United States is also home to the world's largest economy. It has the most powerful military in history. And despite all its problems, it remains a place where millions of people dream of building a better life. We began with an empty land, filled with Native American peoples and cultures. Then came European settlers, colonies, and eventually a revolution. A new nation was born, built on ideals of freedom and equality, but also struggling with deep injustices. That nation grew, fought a terrible civil war, welcomed millions of immigrants, fought in 2 world wars, went to the moon, and became the most powerful country on earth. The United States is not a perfect country. No country is. But its story is one of the most dramatic and important stories of the modern world. Understanding America helps us understand the world we live in today. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope this helped you learn something new about history, about America, and about English. See you in the next lesson. Goodbye.